Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nicholas Jacobino, and I'll be your host for today. It is my pleasure to introduce to you from the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication at Hofstra University, Coffee Talk. Throughout history, coffee shops have served as catalysts for meaningful conversation, sparking intriguing debates. It serves as a place to discuss such hot-button issues as race, politics, and religion, hopefully with good coffee and even better company. We here at Coffee Talk do just that, discuss what matters in today's world. As for today's company, I can assure you they'll deliver. First, we will be joined by Jessica Ma, a journalism student. Here's a little bit more about Jess.
My name is Jessica Ma. I'm a junior here at Hofstra University. I'm a journalism major with double minoring in creative writing and French. Here in the School of Comm, I do radio, so I'm the assistant news director for WRHU. I'm currently associate producing Hofstra Today, and my job is to focus on the journalistic aspect, so whether that's finding stories here on campus and setting up interviews or just doing the research and doing all the reporting side of the show. I've known ever since I was young that I wanted to be a journalist. I've been doing school papers since I was in middle school, so being a journalist here at Hofstra, studying journalism just made sense, and I like the idea of telling people stories and just getting out the stories that we don't really hear about. As a millennial, I do fit the stereotype that I am on every form of social media, whether it be Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. But for me, it's really a fun way to connect with other people, and I know that people like to sort of talk smack about millennials and how we love is social media, but for me, it's a fun way to connect with friends.
Thank you for coming on the show today, Jess. How you doing?
Excited to be here, really excited to.
So you're a journalism student. Tell me more about how you got involved with journalism.
Well, ever since I was a kid, I've loved to write. My parents tell me I've been writing like all my life. And for me, it was a way to not only be able to write in a way that would actually lead into a career, but also I could learn about other people's different stories and just talk to a wide variety of different people about a whole bunch of different topics.
Fantastic. Well, our next guest is Sean Morgan, a television student. Let's learn more about him.
My name is Sean Morgan. I'm a freshman, and I'm a video, TV, and film production major. TNL on Campus is this live sketch comedy show that the Heat Network does, and I'm a cast member and a writer, meaning that I get to sort of be in a lot of the live sketches as well as write some and pitch them at the meetings, which is a lot of fun. I had such an extensive background with sort of musical theater and non-musical theater that when I got here and I decided to sort of do TV and film, I didn't want to stop acting, so I thought TNL would be a great outlet to continue doing that. I think that storytelling really powerful thing, and I think that learning as much as I can about how to do that and how to communicate that is a great opportunity. The reason that I sort of got into movies and TV is that I was pretty young when my parents got divorced. I was in first grade, so watching movies became a great way to escape and sort of relate to the characters on screen, so I got to cope and get over it at the same time.
Thank you for being on the show today, Sean. How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
So you're involved with Thursday Night Live. Tell me, what is one of your favorite sketches that you've been in?
One of my favorite sketches we've done is we wrote this sketch that was about an airline, and it was a pitch meeting, and some of the pitches were absolutely ridiculous, so that was a good sketch.
Well, last but not least, let's meet Chrissy Albini, an urban ecology major.
I'm Chrissy Albini. I'm a sophomore, and I'm an urban ecology major with psychology minor. I was always interested in science, and after I found out about the urban ecology major, I realized that I could do a lot with it and that it's becoming a very important thing for the future world, and with our expanding cities and global warming and everything. It really got me into it, and I realized just what I could do with it. I'm part of SCAFU here at Hofstra, and it's like the science fiction, fantasy, comic book nerd club here. And it's a place that you can go in order to talk about your interests and also find out about other things that might interest you. And so with that, we're able to kind of expand our interests and also to share things that other people might not have known about. My mom was Hungarian, and as a result, most of my family is kind of over there on her side. So it was cool to be able to have the experience of spending summers in Hungary and also having another part of my life in America, and being able to see the similarities, the differences, and what makes each of them important to me.
Thank you for coming on the show today, Chrissy. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Awesome. So you are an urban ecology major. I've actually never heard of that major before. Are there a lot of other urban ecology majors here at Hofstra?
There's not too many. It's a pretty new major, so it hasn't really gotten a lot of traction yet, but it is steadily growing. There's more and more people joining every year.
Cool, cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we'll start our first topic, so stick around.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
We are thankful to be joined by these three outstanding Hofstra students. Let's get right into today's discussion. Our first topic is vaping. We asked students on Hofstra's campus what their opinions were on whether or not students should be able to vape on a smoke-free campus. Let's see what students had to say.
Well, I think vaping in general is pretty stupid. I've heard that it's got a lot of cancerous effects if you vape at like a certain level anyways.
I mean, technically vape isn't smoke, so I don't mind vaping at all.
I don't really care what you do, but I just don't like walking through it.
I think it's okay because personally I quit smoking through vape, and like where I'm from, it's a lot more popular than it is here.
It's still kind of annoying. It's not like it doesn't bother me as much because not going to give me secondhand like cancer.
I just find it sometimes really rude in my classes. Sometimes people actually do it inside the classes, which I don't like.
I don't really care if it's water vapor. Like, you're still like producing that habit within yourself, and so I think you should just not.
If it's inside a classroom or a building, I can't necessarily avoid it, and that's just not fair to people who don't want to be around it.
No, I had a boss at work who would vape in the back room, and that in a small space smelled really bad and was not enjoyable, so no.
In classrooms, I think it should be, instructor's choice. I don't think a kid should just be allowed to go in and start vaping in the class if the teacher doesn't allow it. And I mean, if they're told to not vape somewhere, then they should not vape there. But if they're not told to stop, then I don't see an issue with it.
So Chrissy, I'll start the discussion off with you. What do you think about students who vape on a smoke-free campus?
I don't really have a problem with vaping. I've heard a lot about how it's much less damaging to your lungs and also to other people around that are than it is for secondhand smoke and like cigarettes. So I don't really see it as big of a problem as a lot of people other people seem to see it as. Honestly, I don't think that we should be vaping maybe around campus because just people don't really seem to like it very much. And a lot of people, like the smell might bother them a lot more than others.
Definitely. And Jess, same question for you. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, I think, like Chrissy said, I'm not really bothered by it, and I think a solution to maybe, people who don't like it and are bothered by it would be bringing back the areas where we allowed smoking on this side of campus because, we banned it, and it hasn't stopped students from smoking. I still see students smoking on this side of campus, and so the cigarette butts litter the ground, which makes our campus look bad, and it's dangerous for the animals, and it's more work for our groundskeepers. So I think just having designated areas where people could smoke or vape if they wanted to, because regardless of what rules we make about it, people are going to do it anyway, so we might as well give them an area where they can just make the rules a little clearer so that we just have a better environment for everyone.
Interesting. And Sean, considering that vape is just water vapor and not like cigarette smoke, do you think that students should be allowed to vape inside classrooms, or do you think that it should be treated the same way as cigarettes?
I think it should be treated the same way as cigarettes in a classroom setting, because I think that regardless of whether it's smoke or water vapor or what have you, the smell is going to bother other classmates and sort of pull from what the discussion is supposed to be about. So I think that Jessica's idea is sort of better, where if we were to have designated areas on campus for people to vape and smoke, whichever they prefer, then that might help a lot more.
And Jess, I'll go to you as a journalism student. Recently, there's been a lot of controversial reports about the health risks that are included with vaping on campus. With that said, how do you feel, that there's been an increase with vaping?
Well, I think that right now it's a little too soon to tell. Vaping and e-cigarettes have only been popular for a couple of years. And just look back at how many years that we thought smoking regular cigarettes was okay. My mom used to smoke when she was young, and then she realized that it was bad for her. So just because we don't know yet if it's bad doesn't mean, I think it's kind of dangerous that some companies say, smoking e-cigarettes or vaping is healthier than smoking regular cigarettes, because right now we don't know. And I think that's something that's really dangerous to say, especially like for young people who might be trying it because they think, oh, this is okay,
And Chrissy, I'll go to you with the same question. With these reports coming up and such an increase of people vaping, how do you feel about these, supposed risks?
I definitely agree with Jess on that topic, that just because we don't necessarily know if they're dangerous or not, doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't. Like she just said, that we thought that cigarettes were perfectly fine for decades, but then we discovered that they can cause lung cancer and birth defects and all sorts of other problems. So who knows what vaping might actually cause, and we haven't really noticed it yet just because it's such a new thing and people haven't been doing it for so long, that we should kind of approach it with caution. It doesn't necessarily mean that people shouldn't be doing it at all, but also kind of take into consideration that it's a new thing and we don't really understand it very well.
Yeah, I think that studies regarding the chemicals that actually go into vaping, I think that those should really be focused on right now, because right now I think the jury is out on the health risks involved with vaping. And I think that because of that, advertisers have a lot more leeway right now to target younger audiences. So if it turns out that the health risks are abundant, it's going to mean that there's already a lot of young people who are at risk for that.
Interesting. Well, great discussion, guys. We're going to take another break before we start our next discussion topic, so don't go away.
Me and my boy Matt had it good. He had catnip that was off the hook. But one day, he brings a girl home, and she's allergic to cats. Every sneeze was a nail in my coffin. Now I'm in a shelter. It's decent, but they don't even have Wi-Fi.
It's time to discuss our next topic, news. We asked students where they got their news from. Let's see what the buzz is on campus.
I get a nightly news briefing from New York Times via email. If I'm on my computer, I will look at the horrible glamour news that's on the Facebook's side timeline for their supposed news section.
Most of the news I get them from Facebook, Twitter sometimes. Sometimes I try to download apps for actual news, but I never use it.
I have a million and one different news sources on my phone that give me breaking news updates all the time. So AP, CNN, NBC, Fox, I get from across the spectrum just to make sure I'm in the know.
I like to watch, those satirical shows like Daily Show, Colbert, and John Oliver, stuff like that.
I think those are not good sources just because on the case that they're fully biased for the sake of comedy.
I'd rather get my news from something satirical and funny than no news at all, because I get kind of bored watching the regular news.
I mean, our generation definitely has no idea what's going on in the news most of the time.
I feel like a lot of people give our generation a bad rep about being uninformed and having no clue what's going on outside of campus or outside of the town that they live in.
I think we have a lot of information and it's hard to sort through good sources. So I think we do a lot of BuzzFeed when we should be using BBC News.
So Sean, we'll start off discussion with you. Where do you get most of your news from?
I get my news from a lot of different sources. I tend to have CNN on the television when I'm just doing busy work and things like that. I watch a lot of satire too, like John Oliver and Stephen Colbert. And then like a lot of millennials, I do end up sort of gleaning some news from my social media habits, which maybe isn't the best idea, but it just happens.
Same question to you, Chrissy. Where do you get your news from?
I actually get a lot of it from social media. You probably don't really dig that very much, but for the most part, I tend to hear about things from social media. I don't necessarily get like the news from it, but it kind of inspires me to go look for it, like look onto like more legitimate news sites and like TV shows and things like that. I'll look up things more so and do my own research when it comes to news and whatnot.
Interesting, interesting. And Jess, again, same question to you. As a journalism student, you're always on the look for, the most recent news, the most, buzz news. Where so where do you get your news from?
Pretty much everywhere. I get Associated Press articles and notifications sent to my phone, New York Times, CNN. I think the most important thing is just to find your news from a whole bunch of different sources, because there's always something that a story has to leave out, whether it's because a reporter is biased or they just don't have the room for it. There's always going to be something else left out, so it's great to get your news from a whole bunch of different sources to try to get as much of the picture as you can.
I definitely agree with Jess on that topic that you can't really just pay attention to one news source. You can't just watch CNN or only read from one news source. It's you have to read from a lot of different places because a lot of people can be biased without actually thinking about it, or they might be writing an article based off of what their head companies or CEO wants them to talk about, or they might be leaving stuff out that they shouldn't really be leaving out.
Interesting, yeah, definitely. And all you guys bring up great points about the abundance of information that we're on there. So I'll open up with Jess. Jess, do you think that our generation having this abundance of news makes us more informed, or you think that our generation doesn't really care about as much as news, so we're less informed?
Well, I think it's entirely wrong to say that our generation doesn't care about news. Because obviously, I care about the news. I'm a journalism major. I know plenty of other journalism majors. I think how you mentioned, there's an abundance of information. People are just almost overloaded. There's too many things to be able to focus on all these things at once. And I think in a way that's good because you can pay attention to the news that really matters to you. So maybe you're not getting the same news as, your parents or your neighbors or anything, and maybe that makes you think, oh, well, they're misinformed. But they're not misinformed. They're just informed by different things.
Definitely. And Chrissy, again, same question. Do you think, being a non-journalism major, do you think, maybe you and your friends are less informed, more informed? How do you feel about this generation?
I feel like people kind of look at our generation and with a bad, through a bad lens. They think that we aren't really paying attention to what's going on. But I think that our generation has some of the best access to news, and we are one of the most informed generations simply because we have this access that really no other generation has had before, that we're able to get information from Beijing 2 hours after it happens, that no other generation would have been able to do that before us necessarily. That it's I feel like simply because we have so much going on that sometimes people aren't necessarily paying attention to what maybe other people might consider important, just because we don't really have the time to dedicate to looking at everything that's going on in the world.
I agree. Sean, you brought up an interesting point about satirical news sources. Do you value these satirical news sources? Shows like The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, Tonight with John Oliver. Do you think that these shows are great news outlets for younger generations as ourselves, or do you think maybe we should just take them as they are?
I think they're great because they get young people interested in news, and there are actual nuggets of information to be found in those types of shows. But I do think that as a viewer, you need to take it with a grain of salt because I think a lot of these pundits sort of lean towards the left, and as someone who's left-leaning myself, that's obviously going to speak to me. But I think knowing that there's bias inherent in any sort of source, whether it be a publication, a major network, or a pundit, a satirical pundit, knowing that is very important, I think.
And Jess, again, I'll open the question up to you. Do you value these satirical news sources? Do you think that we can? There's a lot to be had with those, or do you think we should just take them as they are?
I know I agree with Sean completely in that, even if they're striving to be as, non-biased as possible, just presenting it humorously, maybe SNL, for example, they're still trying to go for a joke, and I think that inherently has to do with some sort of skewing, some sort of exaggeration,
I agree.
of
I
a
agree.
point. So I agree, you know, it's a great way to sort of get interested in a topic, but you should never rely on just one place for any kind of news.
Definitely, definitely. Well, great discussion, guys. But before we start our last topic, we're going to take one more break, so stay tuned.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
We're ready to discuss our last topic, dating. We polled students to see if they have used popular dating apps like Tinder and OkCupid. Let's see what they had to say.
I have used Tinder in the past because my friend signed up an account for me, and yeah, it happened.
I had Tinder for 2 weeks my freshman year, and people kept trying to talk to me, so I deleted it. I didn't want that.
I do, and I will abstain from answering that question.
I kind of like to just, meet people out in public and whatnot. People on Hofstra campus, then we have something in common. We're on Hofstra campus.
I think dating apps are horrible. I mean, you're judging someone based off of a picture. Like, how well do you know them? If you're holding a dog, like, yeah, I'd probably swipe right.
Me and my friends think it's really funny to use Tinder. We just kind of go on there, swipe left, swipe right, just to see what happens. I think it's funny.
Some of my sisters talk about Tinder and everything, and it sounds so scary and intimidating.
I feel like all the people I know who use Tinder heavily use it for just like casual sex and hookups, which if it floats your boat, it floats your boat. So, I mean, I guess it depends on your view of relationships, what kind of person you are.
No, I just think it's a new way of meeting people. Every generation has its own way of, dating. So I think this is just our generation's version.
It's definitely different than how our parents met each other because, that was relying on social interaction. And I think that still has a lot of, value to it because meeting someone in person, being able to hang out with them and get to know them on a personal level is very different than, messaging them back and forth on like an app like Tinder.
So Jess, I'll start the discussion off with you. How do you feel about using these dating apps to find real relationships?
Well, I've used it in the past. I've gone on dates with people, and actually my current boyfriend, we reconnected over Tinder. We had a class.
Tell me more.
We had a class together my freshman year, and then never saw each other again until we just happened to be swiping right, and I was like, hey, you look kind of familiar. So I would say there's the possibility of finding real relationships, but I would never tell someone like, oh, you should definitely get a Tinder and you'll find the one. It's pretty much like a hit or a miss, especially because of just the nature of it. That's very superficial, just like, hot or not. I've definitely gone on it just for the fun of swiping. So I would say don't take it seriously.
Sean, same question to you. How do you feel about finding real relationships on Tinder?
I think it's definitely possible. I don't have any experience with dating apps, really. I met my current girlfriend just organically through friends. And I think that as someone who's sort of used to that method of dating, it's easy to be tempted to dismiss these types of dating apps. But I think it's wrong to do so because I think just as in like the sort of real organic dating world, the same types of nuances apply to sort of online dating, where there will be people who just want to hook up, there will be people who are, deceitful, and then there will be people who are, genuinely interested in potential partners.
Interesting. Chrissy, I'll ask you, they bring up some good points. Do you think that these dating apps have skewed our versions of relationships, or do you think that, these are maybe even better ways to find relationships nowadays?
I really don't think that they've skewed our view of relationships because they've definitely kind of changed the way we find like people to date, or maybe like even like our soulmates or whatever. But I feel like it's just a good way to find people outside of your friend group too, and like to kind of meet people that you might not have met otherwise. And I feel like that we just because we have this new method of finding people doesn't necessarily mean that it's like that we're not going to find any other possible partners like through like the old-fashioned ways. Like, I met my boyfriend through mutual friends too, but like I've also been on dating websites before as well, and it's like I've seen like the positives and negatives of both. Like sometimes you have like good conversations with people online, sometimes you have bad ones, sometimes you have really bad ones.
I'm sure.
Like, but at the same time, like with but you can also find like interesting people to talk to. You can have really great conversations or meet interesting or like just like find interesting relationships that way.
I think also something that makes it different, not necessarily better or worse, is just that, you know, like Christy said before, the old way was you would maybe meet friends of friends, or somehow the dating pool is a lot smaller now. Obviously, it's a lot bigger. You can, you know, look for people 50 miles away. And I think it makes you have to be a little more efficient, maybe. People always talk about how, you know, you have to have a solid pickup line or a solid first line on Tinder if you're going to get a response. And I think it might make people jaded, of course, but I think it sort of goes back to what I was saying, that you can't go in and expect that you're going to get something out of this. Go in and, like Chrissy said, try to find just people you can talk to and have a good conversation with, and then see from there, does something lead more organically.
Definitely. And so, Jess, I'll ask you the last question. You know, do you think that the classic ways of dating, you know, in our parents' generation are, you know, soon to be out the door? Do you think that, you know, Tinder is, you know, these dating apps like Tinder are here to stay or the future? Or do you think that, you know, there's still grounds for both?
Definitely grounds for both. I think a lot of people still like the idea of the old way. You know, you always have the girls like, oh my gosh, we met just by bumping into each other and it was so romantic. And I think that's just something that we've just ingrained into our culture, that there's something nice about just meeting someone. But I think that there's also merits to, you know, just like finding people in other ways that, you know, maybe you have a stronger connection with, because you can say online, oh, hey, I'm interested in this and this and this, and you can sort of screen people that way. I think both of them have their pros and cons.
And Sean, I'll take the same question to you. You know, you said before that you found, you know, your girlfriend the, you know, kind of classic way, as so we put it nowadays. You know, do you feel that, you know, this might have worked now, but in future generations, do you think that, you know, dating apps are the way to be? Or again, do you think that there's still grounds for both, that there can still be that kind of human connection?
I definitely think that there's going to be grounds for both, and that even as technology becomes more prevalent, there will always be grounds for both, because I think it's tough to say that traditional ways are going to go out the door when in everyone's day-to-day life you interact with so many people, and some of those interactions are going to flower into friendships, which will flower into relationships. So there's always going to be that sort of genuine face-to-face human interaction too.
Interesting. And Chrissy, again, same question.
I mean, I feel like we're always going to have like those classic ways of dating that like you just meet people through friends, or you get to know someone and you realize, hey, I wouldn't really mind going on a date with you. But I feel like these new ways of dating are just kind of broadening that and making it so that there's even more people that you have the option of meeting, and that there's even more people that you like just have the experiences with, and that it's kind of nice that way.
Would you recommend a lot of these apps to your friends, for, you know, some of your single friends?
I feel like it would really depend on what they're looking for. Like, you definitely would have to put on there that, like, I'm only looking for this, and you would kind of have to be prepared for people that aren't necessarily going to take that little advice there. But you also, like, don't go into it thinking, oh, I'm just going to find a bunch of terrible people and they're all
definitely.
But you should go into it with an open mind.
Of course. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. From all of us here at Coffee Talk, thanks for watching and have a pleasant tomorrow.